Greetings to everyone who's watching Mamarga Gasawi TV. You're going to be with me, Princess Modisha, and let's start with the news headlines. President Paul Kagame has held talks with his Central African Republic counterpart, Faustin Touadéra, who is in Rwanda for the two-day working visit. On the international scene, Pope Leo calls for the release of the kidnapped students and priests. Suicidal bombs killed 3 at Pakistan paramilitary HQ. Let's take a short break to be back into the news details. Let's turn to news details here in Rwanda, where President Paul Kagame has held talks with Central African Republic counterpart Faustin Touadéra. He's in Rwanda for a two-day working visit. According to the Rwanda's Office of President, the two heads of the state discussed the existing cooperation, including Rwanda's ongoing support through the Rwanda Defense Forces troops serving under the existing bilateral security agreement, as well as those serving the United Nations mission. Both leaders also exchanged on the opportunities to strengthen bilateral cooperation through collaboration in various sectors of the mutual benefit for the peoples of Central African Republic and Rwanda. President Touadéra arrived in Kigali on November 23, 2025, where he was received by Rwanda's Minister of Interior, Dr. Vincent Biruta, before meeting President Paul Kagame later in the evening. The relations between Rwanda and the Central African Republic have grown significantly over the years, and with the security cooperation standing the core of this partnership. Rwanda first deployed troops to the Central African Republic in 2014 as part of the effort to restore stability following waves of the conflict that began in 2012. Rwanda's forces were initially deployed under the African Union mission before transition to the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission, MONUSCO, a few months later. Their responsibilities including protecting civilians, safeguarding UN equipment, and ensuring security car heads of the state and his family. In 2020, Rwanda sent additional troops under the bilateral agreement with the Central African Republic. Through the same agreement, Rwanda forces have been training KA's national army. In March 2025, the third cohort of 438 KA soldiers trained by the Rwandan troops completed their military courses, with included enemy detection, territorial defense, map reading, and field operation. Over nearly 11 years of cooperation, the partnership has expanded beyond security, with Rwandan peacekeepers also supporting the community welfare initiatives, including providing medical services to the local residents. In February 2025, Rwanda and Central African Republic further deepened their cooperation by signing security partnership agreement between the respective interior ministers. President Touadéra's visit comes just days before the Central African Republic heads of presidential election scheduled for December 2025. In July 2025, he announced that he would be seeking another term in the office. Turning to the next story, Ministry of ICT and Innovation, in collaboration with Kip Martinez, delivered an artificial intelligence leadership training to members of the Parliament, responding to the growing need to deepen understanding of the emerging technologies. This marks an important first step in strengthening government institution capacity of AI governance and enhancing its full potential. Now let's turn our focus to this story, where the government is preparing to roll out national digital identification system that will allow residents to use the digital ID starting in June 2026. The initiative follows the enactment of a neighboring law in 2023. To understand the purpose, benefits, and the implementation plan, the New Times spoke with Josephine Mkesha, the Director General of the National Identification Agency. She said that the project will cost more than 50 million euros, and as of November 20th, 2025, over 3,000 people had already registered for the new digital ID. Let's take a short break to be back into the international news. Let's take a look onto the international news where the controversial 28-point United States and Russia plan for the Ukraine, the Russian frozen assets to fund the reconstruction of Ukraine and the future of Europe's security are hot themes under discussion this week in Brussels. Sandra Tumukunt proceeds.
Let's start with international news. In Africa, at Sunday prayers, Catholic Pope Leo XIV called for the immediate release of students and priests kidnapped in recent days in Nigeria and Cameroon. Some 315 students and teachers were abducted on Friday at the St. Mary High School in Nigeria's Niger State. Meanwhile, 6 Catholic priests were kidnapped from the Archdiocese of Bamenda in Cameroon, and Baptist pastor was abducted in the same region. He appeared for the immediate release, calling on the competent authorities to take appropriate and timely decisions to secure the liberation. Finally, the Pope invited everyone to pray that churches, schools might never be detected of violence. The Christian Association of Nigeria says about 50 children kidnapped from the Catholic school have since escaped and have been reunited with their family. Friday's abduction was the latest in the wave of attacks by armed groups targeting vulnerable civilian population. The abductions come as US President Donald Trump threatened military action over what he claims is the persecution of Christians by radical Islamists in Nigeria. Turning to our next story, the United States and Ukraine were set to continue work on Monday on a plan to end the war with Russia after agreeing to modify an early proposal that was widely seen as too favorable to Moscow. The two sides said in joint statement they had drafted a refined peace framework after talks in Geneva on Sunday, although they did not provide specifies. It was not clear how the updated plan would handle. It was not clear how the updated plan would handle a host of issues, including how to guarantee Ukraine's security against ongoing threats from Russia. The United States and Ukraine said they would continue intensive work ahead of Thursday deadline, although U.S. Secretary of the State Marco Rubio would lead the American delegation during the talks was flying back to Washington late on Sunday. U.S. President Donald Trump has kept up the pressure on Ukraine to reach a deal. On Sunday, he said Ukraine had shown zero gratitude for American effort over the war, prompting Ukrainian officials to emphasize their thanks for Trump's support. Trump previously set a Thursday deadline for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to accept the peace, but Rubio said on Sunday that the deadline might not be set in stone. Zelensky could travel to the United States as soon as this week to discuss the most sensitive aspect of the plan with Trump, according to the source familiar with the matter. Concluding our international news, 3 suicide bombers targeted the headquarters of Pakistan paramilitary force on Monday, killing 3 personnel, wounding at least 5, authorities say. The attackers opened fire as they forced themselves into the headquarters of the Frontier Constabulary in Peshawar city before blowing themselves up inside the complex, Paul said. The first suicide bomber carried out an attack on the main entrance of the constabulary, and the others entered the compound, a senior official told Reuters, on condition of anonymity, as he is not authorized to speak to the media. Law enforcement personnel, including the army and police, have cordoned off the area and are careful handling the situation, as we suspect there are some terrorists inside the headquarters, that the official said. The road had been closed for traffic and cordoned off by the army, police, and security personnel. Safadar Khan, a resident of the area, told Reuters the 5 wounded people, including 2 paramilitary personnel, were taken to the leading hospital. Its spokesperson Mohamed Asim said no militant group has claimed the responsibility for the attack so far. So Sandra Tumukunde, Mama Rwanda Sau TV.
As we come to the end, let's go back with the news item. President Paul Kagame has held talks with Central African Republic counterpart Faustin Touadéra, who is in Rwanda for the 2-day working visit. On the international scene, Pope Leo calls for the release of the kidnapped students and priests. Suicide bombs killed 3 at Pakistan paramilitary HQ. Thanks for having me.